Welcome to this video. So today we're going to be talking about a topic which by its essence brings a lot of attention to that of the life of a coach as well as the clients that they're working with. And we're talking about training celebrities or elite athletes. So I would like to start off by discussing, given the sensitive nature of a celebrity's image, how do you handle confidentiality and discretion in their training?
Uh, I think first, maybe before we even get to that question, because this is one of those topics which I assume in courses which are out there, not handled most of the time. In universities, we are not taught maybe, about how to handle a famous athlete, right? We are taught about what to do with an athlete, but what do you do when there's somebody who's very famous? So when it comes to celebrities, if we talk about, which where athletes also can be famous, then there could be people who are maybe actors who could also be famous. Both some, of course, as a strength coach or even for personal trainers, they would be working with people because they are working on the bodies, the physical aspect. So there are three main sort of things to remember about these sort of influential people. One, either I always say they have a lot of power. It could be government officials, politicians, statesmen. There could be some who are officers in very high-ranking positions. So they have a lot of power. Need not have maybe a lot of money. Okay, so there's power. Then the second group that comes in is who have a lot of money. Sometimes it's industrialists or owners of probably huge estates or people who come from royal families. They could have maybe a lot of money. And the third that comes, this is where athletes fit in, are the ones who are very famous. So an athlete can be very famous, but of course not as wealthy as some of the industrialists out there, right? And sometimes an athlete or an actor can be having money as well and power, but definitely more popular. So if we look at, and a simple example is like of a politician and an actor or a very famous athlete. If they happen to come to the airport, whom would most people run to get an autograph with? They would obviously, most of them would go to the actor or the athlete. The industrialist, most people wouldn't, they would know, but that sort of rush desire wouldn't be there possibly. So we have to understand these sort of three aspects, okay, of where they come from. Now within that, coming to your question of how to maintain confidentiality, it's not even an option, you have to. Okay, because one, we have to realize that we are dealing with very influential people, right? And because they are so influential, their secrets sometimes or their lifestyle that they wouldn't want others to know, like what happens in their personal lives. One is that for athletes, it is about their training. If somebody is training and preparing for a certain competition, could be the world championships, could be the Olympics, could be the Asian Games, or could be anything, they obviously wouldn't want their opponents or their competitors to know what is being done. So sharing that, of course, is like not just a breach, but it is also something which will put a doubt on our character as strength coaches. So a lot of strength coaches have to understand this part, that when you train somebody, it has to be something which is done in a lot of confidence, because that person has put confidence in you, and you also have to give them and be the person that this sort of aspect is respected. So it's not even an option where we shouldn't sort of kind of where we have a choice. But one thing I would add here, and this is where maybe sometimes trainers can make mistakes, coaches, strength coaches can make mistakes, is where if let's say there's a TV program that comes up and somebody is covering the athlete, for some show that they're doing, and occasionally, these channels would ask that, oh, we would want to see you training in the gym, and we want to have a recording so that we can just show the exercises you do. And if you are asked what should you do in that case, number one would be not to show the exercises which you actually do, because if they are effective, why would you show it? So this has, in my personal experience, I've gone through this where people ask for these sort of small clips or something, and you never show what you actually do. You show something very generic, which is sort of very common. Because why would anybody show or expose the skills or the tricks or the secrets of their training? So if you are ever asked by any sort of TV channel or something, strength coaches should know this part. The second part about confidentiality is to remember that when somebody is recording a video of that athlete, so you could be in a gym, and let's say some fan comes over and they start recording because this person is training. It is your role to ensure that that is stopped. And I would go to the extent of saying that even when athletes want to record something, if they are training with me and I'm doing a program and they are making exercises, even to record over there of what we're actually doing should not be allowed. So it's two ways: either the athlete stops it or you stop. And inside the gym, what happens is really under sort of your call. It's you are responsible for what happens inside. So any recording, one has to be extremely careful, because sharing info verbally is still something which the other person might forget. But you've got a recording, it just tells exactly what you're doing. So with the advent of phone now, every second person has a phone with good quality. So this is something we have to look at a bit carefully, that clips, any shooting that is done, it should be done with permission. And we have to also be aware while working with popular people that if somebody is taking a video, then you need to be knowing that is going on, because that could go anyway. So we have to be very, very aware of this to make sure that it sort of doesn't get used for the wrong purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes a breach of confidentiality and things like that can, I mean, one wrong incident is enough to end the career of a strength and conditioning coach.
And also to create a doubt, for the athlete itself, because then the trust bond is sort of broken, right? If somebody does that, shares a video knowingly or unknowingly. People always say that I never thought this would lead to it. So it need not be knowingly. It could be even unknowingly. Somebody just sends a clip, of the athlete performing something, and you just send it to your friend or to your family. Hey, look, this is what we were doing, and this is what happened. The athlete fell down today. Now if that is shared, okay, that could go from one friend to another and so on and so forth. And that the news sort of comes back to the athlete that this is what happened. It's not good anyways for a strength coach. So we have to be very clear. Once you get into the gym, it's your responsibility there. If you're doing some drills outside, again, it's your responsibility. You have to be aware. So you have to keep a check on the surroundings, because that confidentiality which sort of we are talking about is also dependent on the location. Most times it gets breached when the location, the variables are too many. A lot of people watching, this, that, so you have to be a bit careful about that.
My next question would be, what considerations or modifications should one make to ensure a comfortable training environment for celebrities, especially for those who prioritize their privacy?
If it's a top athlete, let's say, very famous, and we know that if they come to a gym, people will flood them. Now, obviously, if somebody is very famous, they would be training in a good, decent gym, where if they're traveling, it's going to be a 5-star hotel. Or if they're traveling in a facility, it's, people who are around also know that not to be disturbed. We have to ensure, I feel that, whenever they are training, because also they are training under it's sort of, our time with them. It's your professionalism that shows. So we should not allow anybody to come in and disturb during a workout. One, and prior to that, the athlete should also be told that this is how I want the training session to be. If a fan comes and says, I want to take a picture, I want to talk, and then you're doing a certain workout, right? The athlete should not allow, and you should also not allow. So this, I think, clarity is important, because if this is not clear, then workouts can just be lost in fans coming, and who doesn't like some attention, right? Somebody coming in and talking to the athlete, saying that, oh, we've been watching your matches, we just like the way you're training. They should know that only after training can you talk, that they can come in and they can sort of talk to the athlete. And if they ask a question to the strength coach, best to keep away, not to give them any info. And sometimes people can be very nice. Nobody is saying fans or any other person is a wrong person, but you should not speak more than what you're contracted for. You are contracted to work with the athlete. Get the job done, finish it, then leave the athlete. Post that, if the athlete sort of decides to discuss a few things, it's still okay. But during the training program, from point A to point B, zero interaction. So the interaction should be with the workout.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes fans, especially like you mentioned, they might have the most genuine intentions of just wanting to meet these stars, but what they tend to forget is that for the athlete and the coach who's there, that's their professional setting. It's not something recreational. That's their work that they're engaging in. So to come and sort of interrupt that, I think that boundary would be very, very important to have.
And we have to create that. Like they say, boundaries have to be set by yourself. So you have to create the fence, where you're sort of wanting to protect the athlete and yourself as well. If you don't create it, you lose it. So this part is important for people to know, that you have to also create, especially with famous people. You can't just get awed by them because they are so big that you just go wherever they go. It has to be very clear what is it that you are working for. And for this part, I will come to the next sort of point, is that before you start working with a famous athlete or even an actor or could be an industrialist, it is extremely important to have a written agreement in which you explain, and you then also verbally explain what you can do and what you can't do. Many coaches, trainers make this mistake of, again, like I said, they get awed, that somebody so big wants to train with them. Even if they are so big, we have to realize that they are just a human body. And I always say, an athlete who's very famous and not so famous, both just have one body, right? There's 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. So our role is to work on that body to make it get better. So we have to be able to explain right in the beginning that this is what I can do, this is what I will do, and do you think there's something else that you would want? So when they explain, then you know that this is what they want, and maybe sometimes it doesn't work out, but it has to be explained, it has to be clarified. A lot of strength and conditioning coaches, personal trainers, they go through a lot of sort of, you can call it heartbreak, because they start training somebody and then later they realize this is not what I expected. I thought it would be a lot better, a lot different. So by the time they get into the whole program, start training, sometimes they start thinking of the maybe famous person as a friend. And then what if the famous person decides to go and train with somebody else? Then they start thinking like, oh, I've invested so much time. It all should be clear in the beginning. It has to be clear, because otherwise you will, lose somebody with whom you had a good relationship also, and you will lose somebody who's your student also. So it has to be clear exactly what are you offering, what have they come to you for. If that is not clear, you just assume it will all fall into place, then when it breaks, it's always a problem.
Absolutely. Great. So my next question would be, given that many celebrities travel frequently, how should one adapt their training program to fit their transient lifestyles?
Whether it's a celebrity or whether it's an average athlete, one thing for sure is that during travel, when you're traveling you can't improve, you can maintain. So this part is something which I feel we all need to understand, that travel, because there's so many variables that change, right? Your home changes, your food changes, time zone differences. So the athlete won't improve during travel. If we can get this fact, I think it makes life a lot easier. So when we travel, we just want to maintain what we've built while you are practicing in your home base. Okay. Now coming to look at it from a point of view of maybe say financial agreement. Like let's say somebody says, I have to travel now. You've trained me, and I want you to travel with me. Okay. That again has to be very clear at the beginning when one accepts that role. That does that include traveling? Because most strength coaches will have a private practice where they are coaching maybe 10 athletes, 5 athletes, or working with a team. And then if they are sort of working in a private thing where they are doing different forms of coaching, and then there's one athlete who is popular and says, I want you to travel, what about the rest? How will you coach them? Okay. Now if you're contracted with a team, and the team is where you're sort of involved, and then travel is part of it, then it's a bit different. Then you're sort of part of the whole program where the team travels, and though that budget is also what it takes you into account as well as a strength coach traveling. But if you're working with somebody on an individual basis, again it all starts with what's in the contract, what have you decided. And again, not to get excited, but to have clarity as in what you want to do, how much are you going to get paid. Very, very important, okay? Extremely important. How much are you going to get paid? What are the hours of work? What happens on a Sunday? What is the time that is there that you work? Does your work start at 8, finish at 6, or does it go through during the whole day? All this just to avoid confrontation and sort of, confusion. Otherwise, confrontation, confusion, conflict, all these things arise, because nothing was clear. Then the person says, I thought you would do this for me. I thought the last physio used to do this for me. The last trainer used to do this. Then you say, no, but this is not how I do. So all that should be clarified first. So they also have an idea about what to expect. So while traveling, and for most problems, the answers should be in the beginning. So if one gets into a relationship where, the sort of player is coming to you, that professional relationship should be very clear that it's a professional, it's not two friends. This is something again which a lot of strength coaches and personal trainers should understand, that when you work with an athlete or with a famous actor or somebody else, they can be very nice, and they over time start, spending time talking to you. They can be very nice, but they are not friends. They are not your friends. You don't belong to the same, maybe economic status, maybe the same fame. And if you can realize this, then you can do a good job, because you can give what is required. But if you start thinking that they are friends, then sort of a lot of things get sort of confused. So during travel, clarify right at the beginning what has to be done.
I think one important takeaway for everyone from this will be that always best to avoid any ambiguity, and
Always.
never make the mistake of just making assumptions. Always best to double check when in doubt, and have that clarity right at the beginning rather than halfway through the process or after everything has, sort of come to a conclusion.
Exactly.
So I think another very important conversation to have with this particular topic is sometimes celebrities need to undergo rapid physical transformations. It could be for movies, TV shows, specific events, functions, anything like that. So how do you ensure that these results are achieved, sometimes almost with unrealistic deadlines?
If it's about a body transformation, okay, now strength coaches, we are talking performance. When we talk body transformations for actors who want a body which looks good, which doesn't have anything with performing good, it is not really our expertise. A lot of times, in many fields, bodies which are built, there's a lot of substance abuse, supplementation, which are not all of them being sort of safe, something which most nutritionists won't prescribe. So there are all these factors which come in. When somebody wants to really get a body which looks good at any cost, and a body which also is achievable very quick. Okay, so we have to again know what we can offer. Do we want to get into that aspect of training where things are not going to be done the most sensible way or scientific way? There might be long-term repercussions on the body by using certain things. So we have to know exactly what we know, and we also have to know what we don't know, and we also have to know where we don't want to go. So there are some things which we have to be extremely clever. It's somebody who wants to transform their body to look good, and because they've got a role and they are saying, I'm willing to do anything because this role is offering me so much and I wanted to do this. We also have to look at it, know your own reputation. If you're going to get into something which you don't know, they use some maybe substances which are not really the most legal or the most healthiest. What does that do to somebody who's working in sport? So some things are just a plain no-go. There are some things that are just red flags. You don't get into it what you can't deliver and what is not correct, from a health point of view. Because even if somebody tries, let's say somebody says that, okay, I'll try my best, I'll try to make you work out, and that person starts using substances by themselves or through somebody else, okay, you are still involved in the process, and your reputation will go down. When proper professional athletes, who undergo WADA testing, who undergo the National Anti-Doping Agency testing, when those type of athletes know, then what if somebody says that, oh, so this is what this strength coach does. He builds a body of people by doing this, and that person was using this. So there's so much of confusion that comes in. So some things you should be very clear. If somebody has to ask me, and I've had these queries in the past, no way, would you be able to train somebody for this role or this? And the answer is no. And simply because, I can't, um, by just training, change the body to look a certain way and, make it so different that, it looks like something which is out of this world. And I cannot do that, as a strength coach. It is not possible. That's the reality. Now, if that person is going to use my expertise just for the body, and still I'm not going to train that person, because like I said, reputation for us matters, and you do it once, you do it 10 times, sort of, it's almost the same. So you have to be stay clear of certain things which you don't want to get to.
Okay. And how would that approach be if you're working with, let's say, elite athletes, especially for whom weight classes are important? So if they need to undergo certain physical changes with respect to their body composition, how should one address that?
If it's wrestlers, judokas, boxers, who are into weight classes, then of course a nutritional plan plays a huge role to control body weight. Our own programming also plays a role. But here we are talking about losing weight. We are talking about getting into a certain weight class. And that can be just by 100 grams, 200 also is fine for them. Unlike earlier, what we spoke about was just aesthetics, where somebody wants broad shoulders, a broad chest, tiny waist, and which generally naturally doesn't happen, especially in the later ages. Once you're across 30 and stuff, it is very hard to have a narrow waist and broad shoulders, right? But that becomes a different thing compared to what we're talking about from a wrestler's point of view, who's competitive, or a boxer. So there we just adjust the training program, depends, on different things. For some people, getting into power training, plyometrics, that itself helps. For some people, getting a bit more into base endurance training, working sort of, more on slow movements, and more aerobic training helps. So there's various ways there, and it's very much possible. Now, if somebody comes saying, I want to get under 58 kilos when I have a certain sort of maybe a match or something, or any weight category, and if it's a matter of, say, maybe 2 kilos that are going to be lost, then that's very doable. But when we're talking about earlier about somebody who wants to get ready for a role, okay, where they're talking about losing maybe 12 kilos, and they follow a lifestyle which is not healthy, from there to this, of changing and looking extremely different, versus an athlete who has already been training, is slightly maybe 3 kilos off because they were having an off season and then getting back. This is much more doable, right? And that's why athletes will rarely find somebody who puts on maybe 8-9 kilos and becomes completely obese and loses track. So, and that's the difference between athletes, right? So for athletes who are wanting to cut down on weight, it's very much doable, very, very much. Nutrition plays a huge role. Our programming also plays a huge role, but it is very doable. Not a problem there at all.
So just to sort of wrap everything together, my question would be, for aspiring athletes looking to work, especially with high profile clients, it could be either celebrities or elite athletes. What are some insights or guidelines to keep in mind when you're working with this particular demographic?
For those who are getting into strength and conditioning and sort of wanting to work with, every person would like to work with a famous athlete, right? Some things to keep in mind: don't become a friend. Okay, it's not a friend. Okay, even if the other person's nice to you, remember that they are not your friends. They are just clients. Friends, there's no money that comes in between. If there's money involved, then they are not friends, right? Be clear right from the beginning that what is it that you are going to do, what is it that they can expect out of you. Let them also tell you, and let it come from your side as well. Okay. Third, I would say is, don't get awestruck by a famous person. Just because they are famous doesn't mean you have to forget why you are there. Okay. So there could be somebody you've seen on maybe the newspapers, you've seen in TV, and they come to meet you because they want certain help. Now, they could be famous, but they've come to you for a specific reason. Now, one mistake that is made sometimes by many coaches is they get so awestruck that they become like a fan, because they've watched that person. So you should never become a fan of an athlete, no matter how good they are. Uh, Work with their body, give exactly what they want for their body. They want power in a certain um, action of their sport. Like say a tennis player wants a much more powerful serve. Work on those muscles, work on those movements, get that done. And you've done your job. After that, be a pleasant person. But a pleasant person is different to a friend. Okay, don't be a friend. Another thing which strongly I would say for a lot of youngsters to realize is when you get into this field, you know, don't get into listening to their private or their personal problems, because once this starts, there's no end to it. If you start getting involved in listening to an athlete's personal issues with maybe their personal lives, they might have boyfriends, girlfriends, and if you start getting into it to help, okay, uh, thinking that let me do, it's anyways for good, you are still crossing the boundary, okay. And a lot of times this happens, somebody tries to do this and then they get into trouble, and once they get into trouble they find that okay, this athlete didn't even support me, okay, or didn't stand up for me. Now why go through all this? Just don't get into that part. uh, don't also become very protective. Another mistake that's made by a lot of uh, athletes or other coaches, sorry, is that when they work with an athlete, strength coaches sometimes become very protective. They feel as if, this is now, I'm here to protect you. I'm sort of there with you. I'm part of your team. You are professional with that person. You are not their bodyguard. Okay. It is not a gang that you're becoming part of. Right. And sometimes you might be made to feel very welcome. You might feel, as a person that, hey, I'm sort of, I'm really being treated well and it's all going good. And let me just be there for this person. You still have to remember that you're just there as a professional. And in 2 months, 1 month, 1 year, you could be asked to leave. If they find somebody else whom they are sort of working with and it suits better, you should be prepared for that. Okay? Don't get into it thinking that, no, this is it, this is for life. It need not be. It's a professional agreement. Get the job done. And if it doesn't work out, you move on, they move on. Okay. But if you end up trying to be a friend, then that's where problems start. So I'd say all these points, about sort of remembering about this confidentiality, of course, not to share, especially with the press, with TV channels, they sometimes want to know certain things. You have to give them good info. You don't have to not like or something or be completely cut off. You can tell, but personal things you have to be very careful. Today's times, one has to also be conscious of what you type and send, right? So a message which sort of is sent about the athlete, to somebody else with that name, and that message snapshot is taken and somehow reaches the athlete. Okay, again, there's a problem. So I think all these things have to be taken into consideration while working with any famous person. Okay, they are just humans like us. It's just a body. Ask them what they want with that body. They want stronger shoulders to do something, do that. Okay, don't get into their personal lives. Don't become a agony aunt for them, to listen to all their problems. Don't sort of also maybe help them in anything. I mean, this might be very rare, but still, let's assume somebody says that they have an X amount of cash, okay, and they say that I would want it to be given to some person, and can you take that? And it's suppose a large amount. You should not be involved in that, okay, because these are things, if you think it's a friend, you'll do it, okay, but you have to be very careful of these things, and one has to be conscious, to know that it's a profession. They are asking you for certain specific help with their body. If their knee is hurting, their shoulders bad, and they've come to you for a very specific thing, right? Do that. If you do that, they'll have a good relationship with you in the long term. If you try not to do this and do everything else right, it just doesn't fall into place. So being professional, ultimately starting with clarity, knowing that this is what is charged, okay, and this is what I'm going to do. And when I travel, this is what I'm going to do. Am I going to train the athlete and their family as well? Again, that clarity. Okay, so everything has to be clear. One has to remember that this is not a friend. They could be very nice, but it's not a friend. So I think if clarity is there, everything falls into place, and that contract then you respect, and something has to be in writing.
Yeah, I think this was a very, very fruitful discussion, especially because This is a topic that is often not addressed in a lot of maybe whether it's certifications, educational systems, or anything like that, because this is not so much to do with the technical side of sports science or strength and conditioning. It's more to do with coaching methodology and experience for sure. So yeah, for everyone watching this video, I hope that this gives you a lot of clarity into what it is to work with elite athletes or celebrities and what are the things to keep in mind. Sort of to summarize, I think the most important factors would be to have clarity right from the very beginning, to always be aware of what is happening around you, and most importantly is to have the foresight and understand the consequences of every single action that you take. So I hope that you got a lot of value from this, and we're really looking forward to seeing you in the next one.
I'll just add to this 2 points which I had forgotten earlier. One is that sometimes you would maybe think that somebody is so wealthy or somebody is so famous. What if I ask for that small favor? Okay, so we have to realize that there's no such thing as a free lunch. There's always something you have to pay back. So don't take favors, and then you are able to do your job well. Right? If you take a favor, then you have to repay it in some way. So one is that to remember. Second thing is, I strongly believe that there is no such thing. There's no qualification called celebrity, and there's definitely no qualification called celebrity trainer, right? And when somebody says, like it's a celebrity, what's the definition? What is a celebrity? Who is a celebrity? How is this decided? There's really nothing, right? If somebody says someone's a politician, then there's a very clear definition. They contest elections, right? And then there's certain sort of election codes. So there's a certain way. Somebody says there's a engineer, and they've got a degree to prove, doctor, this, that, so many. What is a celebrity? So if there's no definition of a celebrity, then what is the definition of a celebrity trainer? So this is something we have to be very conscious of, that you don't want to get known or aspire to be known as that, because if you are thinking of it, what if that celebrity doesn't want to train with you, has stopped? Now, are you no longer a celebrity trainer when they go and train with somebody else? So these things, become very sort of the glamorous side. It is very tempting to be called that, to think that, oh, I'm training some celebrities, but again, when there's no definition, then what are you defining yourself as? So you have to look at it more from a scientific point of view, that you're an expert with qualifications, with a degree, with postgrad, with experience, where you perform certain things and you're very clear. You guarantee almost, that you come, you pay this, and this is what somebody comes to make their shoulder strong, to maybe hit a harder smash, or to, hit do a serve in tennis. Then it should almost be where we are so sure that this will be done. Okay. It should not be that we are just famous because, oh, this person trained with me, this. It's just human bodies which have trained. So we have to look at it like a surgeon looks at human bodies when they operate. It doesn't matter who's down there, whose shoulder it is. The celebrity's shoulder and the average person's shoulder also has the same structures inside, right? And the surgeon knows how to sort it out by going in. That's his expertise, his or her expertise. So in that sense, we have to realize that not to be aiming to be known or kind of look at training celebrities. You're just training humans. Okay, ultimately you should be known as a human trainer rather than as a celebrity trainer.